Hey. When you see island culture, it's different from continental culture.
Nice.
Welcome to the ranch. This used to be a cattle ranch, 110,000 acre cattle ranch. Oh my gosh, you can see my tortoise coming down the hill.
Wait, why do you have a tortoise?
My son inherited a tortoise from somebody. Oh, somebody put a new tracker on him. We put a tracker on him so that we could, find my turtle. Hey there. Yeah, because he's always going somewhere. We are more closely aligned to other islands in the Pacific than we are to other states in the country. Hawaii is the southernmost state in the country, so we have the best solar. So we are at 2,500 foot elevation here. The blue thing is the top of the well. There's a pipe that goes down 2,400 feet, and that's where we get our water. And there's a 75 kilowatt pump at the bottom that pumps the water up and into a holding tank up at the top of the ranch. We don't just get water for us, but there are 150 families on the ridge. They all get their water from here. We get 20 inches of rain per year, so it's not a whole lot of rain. So to take this off the grid, we made a solar array and a battery bank. This is the battery bank. Ta-da!
How many batteries can you fit in a shipping container?
Well, this is a megawatt, 1,000 kilowatts hours of battery. If you just have solar, that means you can only pump during the peak power times. So the solar charges the batteries and then the batteries pump the water.
Why would you want it all inside a shipping container?
We want to keep them cool, the whole system cool. This is easy to move around.
Because you'd move it around just to have...
Well, okay, so if you were the military does everything in 20-foot containers. So rather than have a generator and diesel sitting around your forward base, you'd much better off having something like this, which cannot explode under any circumstances.
It's almost like aesthetically pleasing.
This was definitely a prototype, and then we see how it works, and then if it looks like something that we can sell, then we go into mass production.
Golf cart makes sense, right?
We actually rebuilt this. We took out the lead acid battery and put one of our modules inside.
What kind of module?
Lithium ferrous phosphate. And so that one module gives us way more oomph than we could have had on the
Traditional golf cart?
Yeah, traditional golf cart, yeah.
So this is also your home?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a donkey, sheep, we have goats.
What brought you to Hawaii?
So my father is an avid Go player. Go being a Japanese board game. And he thought that Japanese kids were so well behaved. And I wasn't. I was in high school. I was not well behaved. I turned into a hippie. So he decided to move the family to Japan. And Hawaii was a stopover. It was supposed to be 2 weeks, turned into a year. By the time they actually moved, I was already going to university. My daughter lives up there in the A-frame.
Oh,
One of the
cool.
A-frames.
Great house.
Yeah. And that is the main house. The materials that we normally get on the mainland, like tiles, they don't exist in Hawaii.
Is this a traditional roof here? There's a lot of these sort of...
Yeah, so this is a ranch house. That's the way ranches were built, with a tin roof, because we don't have the clay to bake the tiles and all that. So yeah, it's a material that you can bring to Hawaii that doesn't weigh a ton.
How old is this?
The house is built in 1906, and then it's been through so many transformations. If you can imagine, this place used to have drop ceilings. Can you imagine hiding that? That was all hidden. That was in the 50s and the 60s, that was the thing. The ceiling was right at the top of this ledge here going across. There was no stairs going down. So these posts are the corners of what used to be a bedroom here. And on the outside there was a porch. We call it a lanai in Hawaii. Every ranch house has a lanai, and that's just to keep the house cool. So this was all lanai, and this deck didn't exist. This was added.
Is it hats your thing?
I draw on hats when I go on a trip, whatever happens to me on the trip. This is Korea, and this is Hokulea, and I sailed on her twice.
What kind of pens you use, or what technique you use for that?
Funny you should ask. I'll show you my latest hat, and then as I travel, I fill the hat up. And these are the pens that I use. They're Japanese stationery.
So did you study art?
No. I was going to university because it was the only way to touch a computer back in those days. And then personal computers came out. I wrote the first role-playing game in Japan. So I went from homework assignments to creating a role-playing game. And back in those days, one person could do everything. So I did the graphics, did the story, did the programming, did everything. It took me a better part of 9 months. I had a little marketing campaign. The first 100 people that made it to the end of the game and sent me their password, I would send them a real black onyx. It was the #1 game in Japan in 1984, so I ended up with a publishing company. I created the first couple of games for the company. Then I started traveling around the world looking for games to bring back to Japan. Well, one of those games that I found was Tetris at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. I don't think the people that were showing Tetris knew what they had. It wasn't certainly their A product, it was just one of their extra products.
What made you think that was something?
The way it works, my job was to go and check out all the games. So I would stand in line waiting for my turn to play, and then I'd play for a little while and then get the flavor of the game. Then I would say, okay, fine, I want this game or not. 3-4 minutes to make up your mind. When I found myself standing in line for the 4th time, I was personally attracted to what the hell is going on? How could a game this simple be this attractive and compelling? That's what got me. So I published Tetris on 8 different platforms, 7 personal computers, and on Nintendo. And that was the year that Game Boy was going to come out. So I said, we need to get the Game Boy rights to Tetris. So I got on a plane and I went to the Soviet Union in 1989 to get the Game Boy rights. I didn't know who I was supposed to meet. I just got on a plane and it was an adventure game once I got there.
Because 89 was shaky.
Yeah, so you could say that Soviet Union was kind of coming to an end. But all the trappings were still there. There was still the KGB, there were still gulags, there was still, if you did something wrong, you end up in the wrong place. That's not a good idea. I tried finding it. I had the copyright notice by Elorg or Elektronorg Technica, but didn't know what the hell that meant. When I finally got the interpreter, she said, I can take you there. Well, I got there and we're outside the building and I'm about to go in and she says, you can't go in there. You're not invited. You're here on a tourist visa. You can't just go in somewhere and talk to whoever you want to talk to. It doesn't work that way here. I said, look, I didn't come all this way to stand in front of a door, go back to Japan, get a visa and be invited. I'm going through this door. Are you coming with me? He says, no, I can't go in there with you. So that was the beginning of the adventure. I go in through the door. One person comes up to me and says, what are you doing here? And so I said, I'm looking for the handheld rights to Tetris. And I showed them, I'm the publisher of Tetris on Nintendo in Japan. I showed the box. And she says, okay, wait here. And Mr. Belikov comes and he looks at the package and he says, what is this? And he says, this is Tetris for Nintendo. And he looks at it, and he looks at it. He says, we never licensed Tetris for Nintendo to anyone. And I'm like, holy moly. Okay, so because at that moment, we had $2 million worth of cartridges in manufacturing. I had convinced Akemi to convince her parents to use all of their property as collateral for me to make these cartridges. And if somebody came out of nowhere and said, sorry, you don't have these rights, then I would have had to bury those cartridges and they would have lost all their property. I decided to focus on the Game Boy. Took me a little over a week, but they finally chose me to be the licensor.
So you basically made that cultural phenomenon happen, which is pretty much one of the first global phenomena in modern computer.
People that were afraid to touch computers before that, all of a sudden were okay to touch a computer.
That's for sure, yeah.
In 2005, I sold this company. It gave me enough money to buy the ranch and all that. We do have a garden for growing vegetables. So this is where we start everything. and then we move them out into the garden. It gets cool, so it's too cold for mangoes, for example, or coconuts. Bananas, coffee. This is called a cherry. You will find 2 coffee beans. You dry them, the skin becomes brittle, and then you're left with the clean coffee beans. Now you're ready to roast the coffee. It's a ridiculous amount of work. My wife is into it. And these are our chickens. Somebody's already collected the egg. Come on, girls, you gotta get to work. And this is macadamia nut. You know, so inside is the macadamia nut, and then you take this and you put it in a crack. This is our avocado tree.
Is this treehouse you can go pick?
Yes, because we couldn't reach the avocados anymore. And it says, we're gonna have to cut the top of the tree down. And I said, I got a better idea. I want a treehouse platform so that I can reach up there. Sold a company. A month after I sold the company, I found myself in the back of an ambulance on the way to the hospital. They were supposed to take me in for observation. They weren't going to turn on the siren, but halfway to the hospital, the siren went on. And I had 100% blockage of the widowmaker, which is the largest artery in your heart. And so 95% of the people who have that blockage die. That's why it's called the widowmaker. In that ambulance, the first thing I'm thinking is, you've got to be kidding me. I haven't spent any of the money yet. You know, I worked my ass off for how long? You know, my entire game career. Finally I have my exit. Now I have money, I can do whatever I want, and you can take me out now. And so I worked it backwards. What is it that's going to piss me off if I didn't do something about it by the end of my life? This area behind me here, these are all native plants. This is halekoa. So these are the plants that were here before this became a cattle ranch. This one over here is wili wili, the wili wili tree. Basically, we grow them, we collect the seed, and we have a seed bank where we keep the seeds. But seeds don't last forever, so you have to keep on growing new ones. So this is our seed orchard. And then we collect the seeds and put them in the seed bank.
And here you see old structures, like some of the old farm or old...
Well, that's the stable.
Okay.
And then in the middle is where the cattle separator. They used to bring the cattle inside and separate them. The beef from the dairy cattle, and the moms from the babies, and so on. And so we added more panels on this structure, yeah. This used to be the workshop, and one day the roof blew off, and so rather than just build it back the way it was, we added the concrete floor, we added all this hurricane-proof stuff on top. When it was finished, this was supposed to have all our woodworking equipment and all that, and I said, this is too nice. So it became my man cave. This is my bar. Whenever we have our parties, I'm the bartender. I looked up, so what's the optimal distance from the projector to the projection? And it was 32 feet. And I said, well, how big is the screen at 32 feet? And the answer is 16 feet by 9 feet. So I can show you the seed bank.
I'm guessing this is the bank.
That's the bank. Yeah, it used to be the territory of Hawaii in the old days. That is the seed bank, like a big fridge.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So there's just, everybody has seeds in there. I can see lots
Yeah.
of, yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is your own Svalbard.
Yeah. Well, it's the West Hawaii Seed Bank got funding for this, and they asked if we could host it because we have free electricity. So that's our bank. We have.
Bank door.
By the way, we have more batteries here and more inverters. So these guys deal with what's on the roof, these panels here.
Okay.
This is-
Right, and they're all at 100%.
Yes,
so
they are.
It's just, everything's up top today.
Oh yeah, everything's topped off, yeah.
What does pu'uawa mean?
Pu'u means hill. It's a cinder cone, basically. So there's lots of pu'us all over the island. They're a volcanic afterthought. You know, the volcano happens, and another thing, you know, it's like a pimple. So va'a means canoe. So this is one of the oldest pu'us on the island. The oldest soil is here, so the biggest trees must have been here.
To make
And
canoes.
to make canoes. So that's just my theory, but what do I know? I'm not an anthropologist or anything. I'm just a game designer. It's your responsibility to do something with your wealth that's making the future a better place. for your children and your grandchildren. There was Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and a year after I went to visit, there were still people without electricity. You know, can't you just drop something in a neighborhood and give them electricity, at least for charging their phone? So I asked, what can you fit in a 8-foot container? So everything you see deployed comes from the inside of the container, and we have batteries, inverters, we have everything inside. Right now it's just a prototype. Every emergency service should have something like this that they can deploy. When I was a kid, I watched a movie, the equivalent of James Bond had a laboratory where you could figure everything out. So when I was little, I said, I want one of those. This is my lab. It faces south, so it gets the perfect sun. And then the north face is where all the windows are. So we get all the light and none of the heat. The roof is like this. If there's any heat gain, it follows the roof line and vents out the top. So we never need air conditioning. My laboratory, it's not so much finding out where the bouillabaisse was made. It's more about projects that I'm interested in, figuring things out. We do experimenting, but we mostly do validation. You know, if somebody says, hey, we have this technology, send it to us and we'll do our own test and see, and make sure it works. We have to keep the doors closed because the tortoise comes in, scratches up the floor. So these are the charge controllers. Each one of these controls 18 panels. There are 360 panels on the roof, so we have 20 charge controllers. And what they do is they get the voltage to balance. From here, it goes to our 48 volt, 2400 amp bus. Basically, that's where you send the electricity. It all comes here and all leaves here. If we want alternating current or AC, it goes to the inverters. So each inverter can do 8 kilowatts of AC. Whatever we have left goes to the batteries. Pay no attention to the no photo sign. This is our electrical bay. We are working on new kinds of batteries, new modules using existing batteries, antenna. We spent a year trying a new technology called vanadium redox flow batteries. Didn't quite work. And you can see they look like stereo equipment. And they were originally designed to work in server farms. So original bank was 100 kilowatt hours. And so the issue is not what do we do we don't have enough energy. The issue is what do we do when we have too much energy? Like today, the batteries have been at 100% since 10 o'clock this morning. So what we do, we make hydrogen. So here's an experiment so you can see how hydrogen works. On this side, you have DC of electricity going in here. This is the electrolyzer. Basically, you put electricity and water together, and then it separates the hydrogen on one side and the oxygen on the other side. Once it starts going, there will be twice as many bubbles on the hydrogen side as on the oxygen side because it's H2O. And then once it builds up enough pressure, now we're looking at a fuel cell, which is the opposite of an electrolyzer. What it does is it takes the oxygen and hydrogen and puts it together, and then it creates electricity and water. There goes the energy. So now I can turn off the power and unplug it, and it will still keep going because there's enough pressure on the hydrogen and the oxygen to have it go for a while. But that is what you do with the extra electricity. Now I show you a big electrolyzer. This is an electrolyzer. This is the hydrogen tank. This is the oxygen tank. You saw the membrane inside. There are membranes here, lots and lots of membranes stacked together. If we let it go 24/7, it would make 12 kilos of hydrogen per day. Just using the excess solar.
Why we always have the feeling that hydrogen, like it's almost about to happen all the time. I mean, it's been like 30 years.
Part of it, I would say, just the infrastructure for hydrogen doesn't exist, but that's going to change in Europe big time because they're going to replace all of the natural gas pipelines are going to pump hydrogen now. Every island, if they go solar, they're going to have extra energy on sunny days. And hydrogen is not only a backup fuel that you can use, turn it back into electricity, but it's also a fuel for trucks and buses. Truck and a bus, if you add batteries, then you're spending all of your energy moving the batteries. But hydrogen is light, the fuel cell is light, and you can recharge it in minutes. So first of all, that's where we store our hydrogen at 250 psi. That's low pressure. Okay. Over here in our fueling station, we pump it up to 6,000 psi. This is a hydrogen nozzle. All trucks, buses, cars have standardized behind this. If we were to fuel a truck or bus, it would basically flow from 6,000 psi to whatever the truck is until it gets to 5,000 psi, and then it would stop, it would turn off. We do have a hydrogen vehicle. And this is our hydrogen vehicle.
What do the studies say on the behavior of hydrogen on nasty collisions? Is there any safety concern?
Anything that's pressurized, if your container is not strong enough, it will destruct. But if I were to take hydrogen and say fill up a room with hydrogen, if I spark, nothing's going to happen. Yeah. I have to have the right amount of oxygen and hydrogen in order for that reaction to happen. It's hard to achieve that. But most people get their information from bad information, from the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg, when you see that thing going up in flames, that is not the hydrogen. That is the paint that they used on the outside, which we now call it thermite. The hydrogen on the inside pretty much quickly absorbed oxygen from the air, turned into water, and it rained on the people that were in the gondola, and that's what saved the people. There's so much misinformation, and the reason is because there was spectacular newsreel in the days when newsreels were just starting to come. But if you compare hydrogen to every other fossil fuel, much safer. If there was a hydrogen flame right here, and I put my hand next to it, I wouldn't be able to feel it. Hydrogen flame does not radiate heat. Now, if up on top, yes, it's going to be real hot. You're going to get superheated steam, which, by the way, makes it great for cooking. You know, so we make a wok burner.
So this is hydrogen.
We put hydrogen inside. This is the original burner, but we added this because in the case of propane, you have to mix it with air. But the hydrogen, you don't need to. So this 100% hydrogen comes out of these little dots, and then you get a flame. That flame produces steam, because hydrogen combining with oxygen makes water, and you can't feel it on the outside. So you can put your finger right next to it, and you won't feel it. So it makes a terrible campfire, because it doesn't, yeah, this is another little nozzle that we made here.
So you're testing.
So this is the kind of thing that we make in a mechanical lab. This is our mechanical bay where we grind things into submission.
What do you call your lab?
It's the energy lab. My theory of the future is that I think the future is geothermal making hydrogen. We're always looking up for energy, but actually we should be looking down. The amount of energy that the Earth is venting all the time is incredible.